Go. Okay. So this is the February 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Electric Reliability Committee. And what I want to do first, John, is apart from I think most of us know who you are, John Lewis from the Board of Supervisors. You've replaced Dan Grenier this year as our liaison. First, I'd like to introduce you to three engineers. One is me. Not that I come first, but we have Lee Pedovitz, who spent a lifetime with uh, power utilities. Is that the best way to put it, Lee?
Yeah, that'll do it.
And Bernie is a multifaceted engineer. I know he worked mostly on as a mechanical engineer, right, Bernie?
Yes.
By training, working mostly on heating and ventilating installations, big stuff, not domestic stuff. So that's who we are, and we've been meeting now, I guess, on a yearly, on a regular basis. Not quite so regular lately, but we were meeting on a quarterly basis. I joined the committee back in 2013, 2014, so that's the best part of 10 years. The first item I'd like to get off the plate, if you could, I'd just like a show of hands, Lee, Bernie, and obviously me, to accept the minutes of the meeting of January 2022. All those in favor? Aye. Right, I can put that aside. I can get those posted on the township website, even though it's been a year. The meeting agenda is very light, as I said, because I don't want to say we've run out of things to talk about, John, but with PECO, obviously PECO, because they are the supplier of power to the township. We did write a year ago to PECO, to the board, asking to invite PECO to a meeting to tell us how they are progressing with improvements in their messaging system, because after all was said and done, we had concluded that the most important thing in a power outage, which is a pain in the neck for anyone that's going through a power outage, the most important thing is knowing when it's going to end. And when it's going to end, usually we look at the PECO messaging. And the PECO messaging up until a year ago or so had been abysmal. You know, they dispatch crews, and maybe half an hour later they'd say they're looking for the problem, and then they will give you misleading messages after that, which didn't help. And following a presentation we put together that was sent to PECO, PECO did respond in a very positive way, outlining the things that they were going to do to improve their messaging system, which would affect the whole of the PECO area, of course, which is much bigger than Lower Makefield. It's, you know, what, 6 million people or so. We wanted them to come in and tell us. They had laid out the steps that they would take in improving their messaging system. We wanted them to come in and tell the Board of Supervisors how far they got. Quite frankly, based on the last power outage we had at my house, I don't think it had improved much at all. Still, it looked like the crews were walking around scratching their heads wondering what is going on. So, which wasn't the case. In Yardley Hump, where I live, in actual fact, even while the power outages are going on, we do have a major investment by PECO in relaying the underground cable system, which is, they said it was about 20 or 30 million dollars, something like that, and due to be completed in May. So I did put together a small presentation on what they're doing. If you'd like to, if you could bear with me, I could bring that up on the screen. It's only about 5 or 6 slides. If you don't mind, all I've got to do is find it. Just bear with me a moment. Ah, that doesn't help. I'm looking at the January meeting. I'm going to share my screen. If I share the screen, you should be able to see it. Share. Can you see what's on my screen? LMT Reliability Committee meeting.
I'm seeing introducing our new Zoom whiteboard. So if you have two monitors.
Yeah, I better do that, and I'm going to stop share. I'm going to go back to share screen 2, and then I'm going to go to view. I'm going to go to reading view, and you should see, can you see LMT Electric Reliability Committee? Can you see that screen on?
No.
No, share. All right, sorry.
Yeah.
There we go.
Now you see it. Okay, now you see it. Okay. I just took a few photographs of what's going on around our house right now. And how do I get to the next page? Oh, here we go. And it's really based on replacing the underground cables which feed from the overhead power lines. In our case, in our part of Yardley Hunt, they come either from Yardley Langhorne Road, from the overhead lines there, and from the overhead lines, separate feed from the overhead lines on Edgewood. And the only evidence of power being fed to our houses are these ugly green boxes on front lawns, which take the incoming high voltage feed off of the overhead power lines, which is, I'm not sure what it is, 5 kV or 34 kV, whatever. If you touch it, you're dead. I mean, that's it. It's at high voltage, and these transformers transform the power down to be fed to maybe 5 or 6 houses each at a safer voltage, albeit 240 volts, which we see as divided into 120. But anyway, incidentally, this photograph, if Pico had seen this, they would have said, where's the crew? This was a transformer opposite my house. The Pico crew have walked down the road and around the corner and left it up like that. Any kid playing around there that touched one of those cables would not have survived. I was kind of angry about that, and I expressed my feelings to the crew when they came back. Oh, the cables, for the most part, in Yardley Hunt are now not 25 years old, John, as you said in the meeting, in the supervisors meeting, they're close to 50 years old, because this development was built from the early to mid 1970s. So the cables have been down there for a fair time. But by and large, the cables are all the same. They're, as you can see on the screen there, they're very heavy cables. They have a steel wire clad outer sheath. They have an insulation then between that sheath and the conductor, which is in the center. This piece of cable, if I'd walked up to a Pico crew working on a hole in the road trying to fix a cable, they might have told me where to get off. This was taken by my wife. She just said, hey guys, what are you doing? So they proudly showed them what they were doing. So I thought, that's very good. And you can see quite clearly on this piece of cable where the failure point is. The high voltage have punched through from the conductor in the center to the outer sheath, and bang. And that obviously caused an outage. What they do for the most part, when there is a cable failure, and there are several examples of this laying around the Yardley Hunt right now, they replace the failed cable with a temporary, and temporary could mean there's one at the top of our street which has been there for 6 months, a high voltage cable just laying in the street. In fact, this one in the top right and bottom right, that cable is around about 400 feet long. It runs from this transformer here all the way around the corner and up the street, and you can just see on the photograph going across if you can see that car in the distance parked on the right, there's an orange strip going across the road. That's the cable going across the road to a transformer the other side. So that's what they've been doing to bypass 40 cables. Now we've got this almost like a circus group going around the township, although it's they're doing an excellent job, doing a very, very good job, not around the township, around Yardley Hunt, relaying underground cable. Now to relay it, first they have to bore horizontally underground, and they have a tractor boring machine, which you can see in the very distance, and with drilling bars, rods, tubes, and high pressure water. I've seen them bore underground for a good 200 or 300 feet, and somehow they seem to come up at the other end where there's another hole without hitting any of the utilities in between. Of course, all the roads are clearly marked. All the sidewalks and the roads are clearly marked with what utilities are where. But they have a big cable or conduit drum. First, they put in conduit. That's this big drum affair on the right. And then once the conduit is run through the new hole, they pull cable through, and eventually they end up with the conduit and new cable appearing where they want it to be. The job of connecting the cables, I think, is going to be a highly complex operation. PECO obviously need to know where their circuits are, and while they're doing it, I expect the lights to go out for brief periods of time in our houses, because if you have to reconnect and take the old cables off, put new ones on, obviously the lights have to go out. So that's it.
You know, they should notify you when they're gonna do it.
Oh yeah, they do. Let me see. How do I stop sharing from the? Oh, stop share. Here we go back. Okay, so that's that. The reason I did that, John, is because I think in any invitation to PECO, we should rephrase it as an attaboy. Hey, PECO, we think you're doing a great job, because one of the things PECO doesn't like doing, and we know this from experience, is coming into a public meeting, which and I know Bernie has seen it. The public meetings usually become a free-for-all of people shouting and goodness knows what, which doesn't achieve anything. So anyway, you've seen that, haven't you, Bernie?
Yes, and I think that's why they would like not to have do a presentation directly to the Board of Supervisors, rather than invite, and obviously with the sunshine laws, people will come. But the thing is that one of the times that they invited Lower Makefield Township, the inhabitants there, it was a free-for-all. So the thing is that
Yeah.
The last time they did it, they didn't offer it for comment. They went from one stage to another, and what they were doing. So it was well staged. But you know, the thing is, if it's not well staged, as John says, it's a free for all.
Yeah. Now, I guess 10 years ago when we started, John, you may remember, there were a lot of outages in the township and the borough, because the township and the borough are joined at the hip as far as power is concerned. And I think Steve Santasiero and was it Jim Greenwood, they managed to get some attention from PECO, and they did a lot of things to reduce pocket outages. And things have got steadily better since then. We went through the pains of PECO putting in smart meters, many of which resulted in fires on the side of houses. And those days are over now, and I think the smart meters are working very much to our advantage and to Pico's advantage, because Pico knows now where the power is going. They know when you've lost your power. In fact, often they tell people, hey, your lights are out, before you get a chance to call them. But anyway.
But John, we never were told how often, how reliable we were. The only thing that we had information about was the PUC information for the entire Pennsylvania, or the whole district. And we have been trying to find out the reliability of Lower Makefield. And as a result of that, why they decided to do, and we have overhead lines here, so we've seen a lot of activity, but there must have been some reason why Pico did the work on specific areas, and we don't, as a electrical reliability committee, we wanted to know why they were doing certain things and why they weren't doing certain things. And we weren't told about those things. And personally, things that as an engineer, John said we were engineers, I like the idea of the reason for us to do things, or for Pico to do things, and we weren't told. Anyway, that's my little bit.
Yeah.
So the PUC does track the bottom performing circuits. So Pico is required to send a list of their worst performing circuits. The reason I know about that is the circuit I live on, which is Linton 341, was one of those really bad circuits. So in 2010, it was one of the worst in Pico's system, and that was combined with the state senator, Sanacero, then state rep, and others. We were aggressive at getting them to get reclosers installed there to limit outages and fix things. The challenge on data is Pico says that they can't share reliability or details about circuits because it's information that could be used inappropriately by foreign actors or non-state actors.
I understand fully of that, but the thing is that we don't know where the circuits, specifically in your area, but there are other circuits that with no idea they wouldn't share them where they were serving. So the thing is that
there are two ways around that. For everyone who has a generator, the generator tracks all of the outages, and that could be a way for you to capture that data at a neighborhood level.
We've tried that, and we've
okay.
Thing is that it's only partially information.
The other thing that you can do is people can request an uptime report from Pico. Mm-hmm. I have one from, I think it was 2013. And to give you an idea, my uptime was 99%, meaning 1 minute out of every 100 I did not have power. Mm-hmm. That's since been improved significantly. But yes, that's...
Yeah. Actually, the PUC reports were usually so out of date and really just generalized way beyond anything that we could usefully use. There have been several attempts lately to get utilities across the US adopting
I didn't take that.
Yeah, there's an attempt to get utilities to adopt a newer reliability tracking system, which would take things down to a more granular level, almost to the street level, so that they can tell when their data may show that, hey, Lower Makefield Township has got excellent reliability, not knowing that John Lewis's house is going off every 5 days. It's because in the grand scheme of things, your house doesn't count for much. So now there are ways and means, particularly with with the smart meters and whatever, granularizing, probably not a good word, but getting a more granular view of what's going on.
But even so, it would be useful to find out why they decided, because I always applaud PICO, and I agree with the chair of the Board of Supervisors. I think, we have to give some kudos to PICO, but I still would like to know why they chop trees down in certain areas, but not in other areas.
Yeah,
why they put the different improved the equipment in some areas, because they must know the reliability factors there, and it's a pity that they can't share it.
Yeah, where Bernie lives, John, which dovetails into Sandy Run, that area there has got a lot of old tree growth, and I know I've been on a walk there with Bernie when we've both been pointing out the trees they're going to turn his lights out next. So
But you used to call it the usual suspects, didn't you?
Yeah.
But to be fair, the contractors, the tree people, contractors came down the whole of our street and chopped down branches that they thought would be suspect, and we applauded that. And as a result of that, we haven't had too many power outages recently. But we know that PICO have a reliability kind of algorithm that takes out the weather, and we'd love to find out that.
Yeah, they don't include the weather in their yeah.
So when an adverse weather event occurs, they don't have to, they don't get dinged for that.
No.
They kind of smooth it over type of thing. But we've been to many eco presentations as the ERC, and every time we wanted to talk to real engineers, we were kind of moved around a little bit, and we had to talk to political people.
Yeah. Well, as you and I have found out, Bernie and Lee, I think too, real engineers don't always help. They tend to get their head into the ways and means of getting it there, rather than forgetting that what really matters is when the lights are out. But anyway.
So I think the nub of this thing, John, is why are we suggesting PICO come?
Well, it was mainly the reason I brought this up, John, and particularly the underground cable work going on by PICO, is to we can refresh the letter to the Board of Supervisors.
Mm-hmm.
And give them an attaboy and maybe get them in. But as Bernie said, I know they hate public meetings, and they'd rather orchestrate a public meeting and keep control of what's going on. and you go to this table to see this exhibit, and you go to this table to see that exhibit, and so on and so on.
Actually, I think this venue would work well for Pico because they don't actually have to be there in person. They can do it through Zoom. They could join the meeting via Zoom to make their presentation to the board, and respond to any public comments that'd be related to reliability. I don't know, and I haven't talked to Ted Doran in a little while, which is, that tells you I haven't had a power outage. But that, I mean, I think from that perspective, they have the chance to communicate what they're looking to do, and also introducing them to our new township manager is definitely a win for tighter integration, so that when there are issues that they can work together. Also, we've been doing a lot of road work, and if they're going to do anything that's going to mess up a road, we definitely want to have an advance warning. If they say, hey, we're going to be doing this neighborhood next year, year after, we might not pave the roads there until after they're done, as an example.
For the most part, they haven't had to dig up the roads. I saw them yesterday. They had the cable under Yardley Langhorne Road. It was at least a 300 to 400 foot run from where they started. They bored horizontally, went under Yardley Langhorne Road. They had a lot of cones up there, and they hit the target. The cable came up at the right power pole on the other side of Yardley Langhorne Road. So they're pretty good, these guys. Somehow they know where that's going.
They did a similar thing in the England Channel tunnel.
Oh, the Channel Tunnel, yeah.
20 millimeters, I think. So that was that was 26 miles.
Yeah.
They probably learned things, but one of the things that we thought we could offer Pico is that we could smooth, and I think you've alluded to that, John. We could smooth the path a little bit. If we knew their plans, we could kind of contact the residents and say this is going to happen instead of just happening. I think that's important. I was always grateful to see any Pico van around here. It would have been nice if they'd introduced it and said we're going to be there in 2 weeks' time or something like that. But Pico or Ted didn't take us up on that.
Yeah, and that's something where I think residents would really appreciate having advance warning on when they're coming. But more importantly, we've had issues with other utilities in the area that all of a sudden I start getting calls that someone's sprinkler system is taken out because of the way they did the wires, or we have an issue where someone didn't properly mark. Again, this is not Pico. But and then all of a sudden people are having issues, and they're calling supervisors and township managers, and then you're having to kind of figure out what the deal is. So if we knew in advance on more of these, those are wins for everybody.
Yeah. Well, as far as I know, they haven't hit anything in Yardley Hunt yet. I'll say yet. Being in the fire company, I'm very familiar with the places where have been hit by contractors digging under places. Usually they hit a gas line, and the gas is hissing away. So
can I just ask John, if we were, I don't know whether you've seen the letter that we wrote to the board of supervisors before you came on board. Is there any things that you would like to include or feature?
So for me, it's sort of like we want to know what the investments they've made specifically recently, how they've adapted their communications of outages, what their plans are for the next 24 months, and how we sync those with infrastructure improvements that we're making. Generally, the reason why this issue doesn't have the same intensity as it had in, say, I don't know, 2011,
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
is because things we believe have gotten better.
They have, yeah.
And so,
Do we?
huh?
We don't know because the weather's got better. For us,
Yeah, so we have not had a really significant adverse weather event. We've had some aggressive rainstorms, but we haven't had an ice storm or a huge hurricane or anything. So that's part of it. But I think the question about general uptime, it's right for us to ask, and they're probably going to be consistent in their desire to push back on that. And again, all we're looking to do is benchmark Lower Makefield residents versus other communities. Because the only benchmark people have is when their power is out and they go and find out, hey, all the outages in Lower Makefield, they're not in the rest of Bucks County, then that's why they're unhappy, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. The other thing we found out, John, that when the lights are out, people have got a lot of opinions, but when the lights are on, no one's willing to respond to any questions about the power, you know. It's okay. And of course, when the lights do go out, it never happens anywhere else, you know. That's the common complaint. I know from people in New Jersey, they're saying our power is terrible and it's much better over in Pennsylvania. So yeah, that's the way it is.
I don't know about that. I mean, Mercer County during some of our more aggressive storms, their system was they had better uptime.
Yeah,
during
yeah,
storms.
yeah.
They have a larger gauge cable in general that's on the overheads in New Jersey than we do in the Pico service area. So, but yeah.
Yeah, they have storm hardened overhead wires. There aren't, well, we do have some examples in Lower Makefield on Black Rock Road, for example. As you get down towards the river, the overhead lines there they're bundled. They're storm hardened because there's some pretty big trees down on the eastern end of Black Rock Road, you know, towering over the power lines. So, but that's just one example, not enough. So, but yeah, I do have the letter that we last wrote to the Board of Supervisors. The way that Dan got us to do it before, John, was to send a letter to him, which then forward to the board. I'm assuming that's the way it goes. In other words, we send it to Supervisor Lewis. And
you can, or I was going to say, if you just drafted such that it's ready for our new township manager to send, I'll just forward it along in email so that all he does is cut and paste or put his name in.
I met him a few weeks ago, and he seems like a decent fella. So yeah, I know his predecessor was a stickler for controlling what went through his desk and to the Board of Supervisors. But anyway,
I didn't write fast enough, John.
Oh,
about what the investment has been so far. Plans for the next 24 months and reporting. How has that improved? And you know, we might as well throw in how the uptown uptime, downtime,
yeah,
factors. And you're saying that we won't be able to get those, but we feel duty bound to ask.
I want to make any letter short and sweet. So yeah, try and include all those things, Bernie.
So, John, there's not an issue with them notifying people ahead of time that they'll be in their neighborhood doing the work?
Well, usually they do. I mean, I know some people say that we don't know, but we've had mailings from Pico which say, hey, this work is going to be going on, and any interruptions will be minimal and whatever they say, you know. But at least you get some warning.
Yeah, usually it's like,
Yeah, a Pico letter that says.
So it couldn't hurt to give them a pat on the back for doing that.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and also the township can communicate with people by saying, you know, we have social media channels that are followed by people in the community, email that we can message people with as well. And the reason we want to do that is we want to reduce the number of calls to the township or concerns from people if we can.
Okay. All right. So I'll redraft this letter, which was originally dated February 9th, 2020. That's a long time ago, isn't it? That can't be right. So, whatever. Okay. Shall do.
John, is there, it seemed as though the response from the chair was, I'm not saying tepid, but it wasn't, it was up to us to make a case for it.
Yeah, it's hard for me to assess. I don't want to make assessments of where they're at or why they hold a particular position. Much in the same way that I would think if somebody were to characterize one of my positions, they'd want to ask me first, and of course, I'd be willing to tell you, you know, where I stand, why I could be wrong, you know, all those things I consider. But some members were not as excited as others would be the best way to phrase it. And I'm hopeful that perhaps that will be resolved.
Because of John's exciting memo.
Yeah, I mean, we deal with a lot of stuff on the Board of Supervisors, and many things are, for some folks, not as exciting as other things. I am particularly passionate about making sure everybody has uptime because I'm too cheap to buy a generator. It's not that I can't afford one; it's I choose not to, you know. So I want to make sure that others don't have to buy generators as well.
Well, I did buy a generator, and I feel bad when the lights go out and ours are on. But you know, that's. But after a while, you get used to it. That's it.
And you feel really bad when all those people on your road come to have a cup of tea with you.
Yeah. Well, when was the big storm? Was that 2011?
Are you thinking about Hurricane Sandy?
Yeah.
So that would have been October of 2012.
Yeah, that was so okay. 10 years.
And yeah, so it's
yeah.
11 years. But since then, we've had significant ice storm events, significant other weather-related events that have caused profound outages throughout the service area. But Hurricane Sandy in October 2012 was probably by far the worst.
Yeah, that was a dinger. We fortunately our lights stayed on because our part of Yardley Hump we are fed from the overhead lines on Edgewood Road that come underground, and our neighbours get fed from Yardley Langhorne, and that was out. And so I ran a couple of extension leads across to their houses to my neighbours' houses, and to at least keep their fridges up or whatever. I said, if you take too much, I'm going to know because the breaker will trip. So whatever. Yeah. So I don't really want to do that, Bernie. Have lots of people around for cups of tea, cup of coffee maybe, but I left Britain because I don't like tea. But anyway, that's beside the point. Okay, so all right, we've got something positive here. That's really the only thing on the agenda, John. So anything, Lee, Bernie, anything to add?
Oh, as a result of this, I think we were thinking about, I'm sorry, not as a result of this, but one of the agenda items was, should we disband?
Well, that's how we've been over the last couple of years, isn't it? We're not really, we didn't seem to be achieving much. We'd reached our objective. Things had improved, and when the response from the Board of Supervisors last year, John, was very negative to us from our point of view, we thought, well, what are we doing?
Yes, I disagreed with that response rather vehemently, as I recall. But yes, so I'm hopeful that we can get something scheduled. If that doesn't look likely, then I'm your liaison, and I'm here to transmit what you've want to communicate as recommendations. And if that becomes your recommendation, I would transmit that to the board as well.
Obviously, there's nothing we can do collectively about improving power because that's wholly and solely in the hands of PICO.
We had originally PICO could respond to us on a need to know basis or whatever, but the only power was with the politicians.
Well, yeah.
So the thing is that whatever we could puff and puff about, we needed the backing of politicians to be able to puff and puff.
And I think we've been fortunate in that respect, in that our elected officials above the Board of Supervisors have been very aggressive with PICO. Yeah. Somewhat so that at one time I met a gentleman from PICO. I won't share his name, but he wanted to be told who a certain staffer was for Steve because he feared her, which I thought was funny because the woman's lovely. But that kind of indicated how aggressive the community, and I think our elected officials had become with PICO, and they know if there's a problem, it goes very senior very fast.
Yeah. Well, all we can do is be the squeaky wheel here and just recommend things to the board to pass it up the totem pole and see how we go.
John.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got a cable.
Wait, there's two Johns here. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, right now PICO's got a cable running across a road, right?
Yeah.
Suppose we have a snowstorm and a plow comes down the street. What's going to happen to the cable?
Bang. That's all I can say.
All right, that's all. I just,
yeah.
I don't know what.
I agree, but if you go and look at, it's on Ward Drive in Yardley Hunt. It runs across the road there, and it's been that way now for 2 or 3 weeks since the last outage we had. It got to the point where I could almost tell PICO where to go for the outage, because when the lights go out and where it's gone wrong again. But anyway, yes, a plow would do a number on that cable.
Yeah.
It would do a number on the plow too, because it was certainly.
Yeah, so if it dragged the cable down the street, maybe some parked cars would get nailed too.
Oh yeah, but by that time it should be dead. But yeah, I agree. Anyway, it's not going to snow, is it? So we're okay.
Famous last words, John.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else for the good of the company? Anything else we should discuss? If not,
Well, did the groundhog see a shadow today?
I don't know. I don't
Isn't
know.
today groundhog?
We have 6 more weeks of winter.
Okay, good.
All right.
Yeah. I know I saw my shadow, but whatever. Okay. So John Lewis, thank you for
So,
being in.
what we said, have we got another meeting
Do we have another meeting?
in 3 months' time?
I think we're on the calendar. Katie McVan has got us
Oh,
on
no,
the calendar for the first Thursday of every month right now. So we can choose
Uh,
1
no.
month, 2 months, 3 months.
what I'm saying is, are we going to have a meeting now?
Well, it depends on this letter I put together. I'll circulate it, and if we get a positive response, the answer will be yes. If we get a negative response, we
How
can,
do you feel about that,
we can
John?
convene in the Continental Tavern. So whatever.
So, how do you feel about that, John?
Convening in the Continental Tavern.
I was talking to the other
No,
John.
I agree. I agree.
You know that I love the Continental Tavern, particularly the Road Dead Guy beer. I love it. But that's not the point. John, do you think that's a reasonable approach? We don't need to threaten anything right now.
No, that's a reason. Yeah, if we don't get any, yeah, I think that's a reasonable response, and we just,
And we'll see,
put the committee in abeyance.
we can stick around to get the pool passes.
Yeah. Don't forget this is a public meeting, Bernie. Yeah. Yeah.
However, you mentioning that might have new volunteers for township committees. So
Well, I think township committees are important, John, and there's a number of them, of course, and I know at one point Dan wanted us to take on wastewater, but I don't think any of us really had our hearts in that.
yeah, it's learned a lot about wastewater lately. So
Yeah. So okay. Anything, Lee?
Nothing from here.
John?
I'm all set.
Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
All those in favor? Yeah, I'm not sure how we end this now. Leave the room. I guess leave the room and that'll finish, will it?
Yes.
Yes.